Hi everyone, I'm Marie.
I'm Noelle.
Today I wanted to introduce you to Noelle Russow, who is our guest, and we brought Noelle in because she gifted us such a beautiful piece this year. In fact, I was so inspired by it that y'all have seen pieces of it in our animated short. And we really wanted you to meet her and just take a deep dive into the piece that you made for us, Noelle.
Thank you.
I know she shared a lot of it in our Facebook group.
I did.
But today you're going to get to know a little more about Noelle and look at this piece and how she went about creating it and why it was just so moving for us as well.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate
Thanks
being
for
here.
being here.
And I'm glad I could make something that would make everybody happy here at LivingFelt. So, mainly, of course, for you and Rodney Jean, for all that you do, but for all the fairies too.
Thank you.
My inspiration was to give something back for all the free lessons and everything you do for the whole community.
Oh, that's kind. Well, it's really fun for us to do that. Yeah, we enjoy it because then we get to see where everybody goes with it. Because you just give people a little process or a little procedure, a little technique, and off they go. So, Jordan, let's show this piece to everyone. And Noelle, did you ever give it a particular name?
I think I was toying around with like living the felt dream, something like that.
Love it. Yeah. Well, we're going to spend some time together and talk about the making of this piece and look at some of the individual particulars and elements that you put into the piece and help people just understand even how to build a piece like this, like how you went about it. And I want to share with you all, so we were working on an animated short to put in front of our YouTube videos when we do premieres. And that kind of tells a little bit of our story. And it starts with a farm scene. So when Noelle gifted us this piece, I had to change the barn. There was already a white barn, but I had to change the barn to really this barn. So I challenged the animators with bringing this piece to life in our little animation. And I just can't imagine it now any other way, Noelle.
It came out absolutely fantastic. And of course, I'm honored that you have chosen the barn. It is such a pretty barn, and that's one of the reasons I chose it for the piece. But I love the animation. I was very honored. It just was super cute. I was so thrilled. It was such a surprise.
We like it too. And Rodney did the soundtrack.
Rodney, way to go.
All right down to the animals, which I didn't expect for some reason. The dog barking that you can't see and the sheep. So really, really fun for us. So you had the idea to make this piece originally. Did you start with like the size? Did you hand draw the image? Help us see how you even got to the concept.
So, like I said, my inspiration was to give something back to everybody here and for all the free stuff that you teach us. And I love seeing where everybody goes with all the things. So I wanted to do something, and you brought on so many pieces, the Oprah and Kimberly Pulley pieces and Anna Rupke. And I thought, they've given her such lovely gifts. What could I make that would be different that, maybe not a lot of people would make? Because I'm not good at human faces. Kimberly Pulley's great at that. Anna Rupke's really good with, the sunsets, and Laura Ricks with the landscapes and the waterfalls, which are fantastic. I need to learn to do that. So I was trying to just come up with something really original. And after many months of mulling it over, several hours a day on the golf cart with my dog, it kind of just came together all by itself.
Sure.
I thought, if I were Marie and I had this like idyllic felting life and I wanted sheep I could just grab wool from any time, I would have my own little barn.
Come here, sheep.
Come on, it's shearing time. I just have an alpaca over there in the pasture. So this is kind of how my quirky mind works. So then I tried to figure out, how am I going to put all of this together? And my mother had bought a book a long time ago about barns. And she had used it for many items at a craft fair called War Eagle. She used to paint and sell things at that craft fair in Arkansas. So it had been gifted to me. She moved to our area, took it back because she had some inspirations. I'm like, I need the book. So I went over to her house and I was flipping through pages. And there were a few that really stood out to me. And then in my mind, it was, how do I marry the two? The round barn in the image is very well photographed barn. I believe it's New Hampshire, Ohio.
Okay.
There it is.
Oh,
Yes,
that's fantastic.
The J.H. Manchester barn.
How beautiful.
It's a gorgeous barn, very well known and photographed. I like round barns because they're just so different. You don't see a lot of them. And in my mind, I was like, okay, so the bottom floor, she might have the LivingFelt shop and the sheep. And then upstairs, because barn dominiums are like all the rage now in like, Wisconsin. And I think even here in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
So I like round barns, thinking maybe you live up top and you just saunter down, feed the sheep in the morning, let them out to pasture. I could picture Rodney G out on the tractor, going out to the foothills, manicuring the lavender field, because you always mention how much you love lavender.
I do.
So all these little things just kind of came into mind, and then it was just marry them, put them together.
Sweet.
At my house, we have several of the Texas mountain laurel trees, and people walk by all the time in the spring. Is, oh, what is that? And they grow so slowly.
Oh,
really slow growing, but they smell beautiful, and the flowers are these drapey kind of cone shapes, and they're in that lavender, kind of colors. I'm like, ooh, that would work.
Yeah.
And so the one photo was the round barn. The other photo, there it is. So there's a barn back behind the pond. So I wanted that tree to be kind of right up front in the hill. And so that's where the Texas mountain laurel went.
That's a great composition, that photo right there. The tree goes
It
completely
really
off the page.
Yes.
Like it's just off the page, and it puts the viewer right there at the beginning of that road.
Yeah, you're right in the scene. I can kind of, imagine you coming in the drive.
Yeah.
And, the branches are just hanging over and the flowers dripping in the spring, because I know you like the hot colors. I really try to pay attention when you teach lessons. You're always like, oh, I love this colorway. And
I like pink and
I love lavender. And
that's sweet.
So I try to pay attention to these things. And so then I just kind of built it around those two images. And then I took some other pictures of farms. So I'd have an idea of the layout, like for fencing, for livestock.
Yeah.
That one was the inspiration for the backdrop.
Love it.
So that's the hill that's in the very back of the picture, and then the trees, the pine trees going up, and then your lavender field off to the other side. So that was kind of your Texas foothills. There's the little Y shape there, which I put in.
I always love the hills, the cross. Any, do a landscape, you go, hill, hill, hill. Okay, now what do we put on the hills?
Yeah, so that one was kind of my how to make hills kind of pushing each other back so that the piece would have dimension. Because when I took art in school, we learned about, perspective, which you explained before. You have a dot on the page or two dots, and you draw your line back. But how do I keep pushing things back so it has depth? And it was amazing watching it come to life. So it's like, oh, the sky looks really flat. Oh, I put the clouds on it. And I love thunder clouds. I'm a cloud girl.
I love clouds.
I love clouds. I can get lost in those. So I want a big thunderhead on the one side, maybe a little peak of the dark on the other. So it was kind of springy. And, just kind of that fresh morning air, and the sheep are going. I don't know. It's kind of a quirky thing. How it all came.
No, it's fantastic. I love it. I love it. You put a lot of thought into it, and you were still being a student at the same time. So, I mean, I don't know if you know this, but, if you were to read our mission, it's really about you and you and you and you. You're like everybody. And for us, like one of the things that we know about our community is that very often they're making something for someone else. And that just feels like we're part of this big community of love. And giving, like loving it. And so for us, it's always fun. They're so often they're making something for someone else. And that when they really put their heart into it, they're stretching to make something for someone else. And so in this, you're really demonstrating that
that was a stretch.
You were calling for guidance. You were looking for guidance. You're looking in your real world for guidance. You're asking for your guide, however you ask for guidance, asking for guidance, finding these reference materials. And now you're saying, how do I do this? I just think it's fantastic. It's a great unfolding. And it's just don't you think Jordan, it's very representative of like what a lot of people do. It's just making something for someone else, and so it becomes this challenge. Yeah. So now, did you draw it on paper first?
Well,
or did you just draw it right on the felt? You said, I'm going to make it this big, and you just draw it right on the felt.
I wanted it to be at least like 16 by 20.
Good size. It's a good size.
Yeah. To get in some of the detail.
Yep.
I didn't want to be trying to cram in lesson learned from other items. Trying to cram in something that needs detail in a small space.
I get it. Yeah.
Because I'm very, I like things symmetrical. I don't like asymmetry. I have a real hard time not putting the detail in. You've had other artists on here that's like, it's in the background. You have to know that, you just don't see that much detail. Well, when you're, right on top of a piece, I'm seeing the detail. And so then when I hold it up, I look at it and I step back. I'm like, oh, you would never see that much detail in a tree that far back. So I just had to kind of remember these guidelines as, as I went. So I did not draw it originally on paper. I took the images and put them onto parchment paper, like the outlines, so that I would have a scale. And then I put them up on the piece of felt to see if the scale was right, and then adjusted from there. I have tried the sulky pens with regular paper. Some success, but it depends on how fine the line I want. And so I wanted some very fine, crisp lines for the barn. Mostly the barn was the big thing. The rest of it I can probably freehand and deal with as I go, but the barn needs to be just right. So for that one, I actually used parchment paper. It was a bit of a challenge, and the sulky pen almost came out like little dots. It didn't want to connect because of the silicone that coats.
Because it's resisting.
Correct. So you just get little dots of ink. So it's almost like, connect the dots. And it actually came out very crisp.
Okay.
So I was very pleased with that. I pinned everything into place.
So each element, so you did like the barn as an element. Gotcha, okay.
The tree is an element.
Individual elements.
Correct.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah. Fabulous. And then you got it onto your felt.
I did.
And there it is. And I love how you've kind of outlined the little sections within the landscape.
Yes.
At least planned
in my mind, yeah.
So you started with the sky. You start
I did.
in the furthest back, which makes total sense. And the sky gets lighter at the horizon, which is what we expect. Then you added the clouds in. I love that, just seeing that detail come to life. So let's pause right here. I've never noticed until this moment, looking at these, that you pinned in spots for the sheep.
I did.
So you're filling in the grass and the pins were already in place and you're like, here's where my sheep go? Because you drew them in. So you're let me save a little spot for my sheep.
Yes, I had the little kind of blotchy little spots there. I think I used from one of the photos. It was, kind of the reference, that one we had with the foothills. And so it was like kind of a reference idea of scale. And then I don't know why. I was like, I can put them anywhere, but I kind of wanted them there because I liked the way they came out around the barn.
Yeah,
so I just used little pins to stick into my foam board to mark the spot. And then I did that also later on with the Texas redbud tree to mark that space in so that I didn't lose where it went.
Yeah, cool. Oh, let's see the next. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the pins are still in place. You're filling in the grass. There's some variegation going in there a little bit.
Yep. Kind of rough idea.
And I love how the furthest away is darker. I mean, it's just you're creating the dimension there. There's the lavender fields up there, and now you filled in your little sheep, which is really good. We did Crazy Days not so long ago. So if people are wanting to know how to do little sheep, they could look at our little Crazy Days landscape because they were pretty much the same. A white blob. So
black legs, black
and maybe
head.
a little shadow there.
Yeah, they're really small. They're probably the size of my pinky, they're like less than a quarter of an inch. They're pretty tiny, and I just kind of in hindsight, I'm like maybe I should have stitched in the legs. I would have got a nice clean line, but I was like, nah, it's okay.
You're looking that far away. It's just a blur anyway. You can't see that much
part
detail.
Of the problem is,
yeah, there are some times that people put in too much detail in the distance that you couldn't really see, or like they try and put instead of the big tree, we try and fishbowl everything.
Right.
We try and capture all the the parts of everything, and then you lose like what's missing in this perspective. By trying to put everything in.
Exactly what I was saying
earlier.
It's a good
lesson. Yeah, it's a good lesson.
There were a lot of lessons that in my head I referred back to either from you or guests that have been on the show, like Laura Rick's, like the reflecting pond.
Yeah.
And I haven't done that course yet. I have watched it several times, but I used that for the pond, and that pond was really tricky for me.
Let's look at the pond, sort of.
I couldn't get the forward part of the pond, and to me, in my mind, it's still like there. It was driving me crazy because it looks like it's pointing down. I can see the reflection of, the background.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm looking at it, that front part that's behind the Texas red bud, it just looked like it was pointing down.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a while to figure out how to bust that up. It was never quite the way I wanted it to be, but I got it to something that I thought was satisfactory that I could give to you.
Yeah, I think that's a good challenge. You went for it and you got your clouds in there, and
I did.
Get brave enough to put something in front of it, to put a tree in front of it, because we make these elements, then we don't want to chop them up. Right,
Correct.
We're afraid to put anything in front of it.
Yeah, this one, that would normally be kind of how I would feel. This one, after I started this time-lapse, take breaks to take my dog out on his golf cart ride and stuff, I would go over the footage. And I would see it just start to come to life as everything got pushed back. I'm like, oh, okay, when I get home, I need to put this in front of that, and it'll get rid of that problem.
Right.
The pond, like I said, was still tricky even after putting in that Texas red bud.
But that's a really good point, because I've really found that if I photograph something and then walk away from it, then you can see something else when you're looking through that. You're looking through that snapshot, or if you could also, depending on the size of the piece you're working on. We're so often we look like this, or we're looking like this, and like I've done an entire picture like this on my lap, and then when I stood it up, I was like, "Uh-oh," honestly, I did a bull, and the perspective was so wrong that I had to redo it. And so, if you can take the piece you're working on and put it up, so that when you walk back in, you're looking at it the way it will be viewed, which is usually on a wall and not like this.
Yes.
Because the perspective gets off, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Now,
even if you're hovering, I was sitting at my kitchen island. I have a really nice drafting desk in my studio, but it has stuff on it. And it just didn't occur to me, take the stuff off and tip the desk.
Right.
So I used that on my latest piece, my Pele piece. So I took everything off the desk and I flipped that desk up as much as I could so it was still comfortable.
You're looking at it.
So I'm looking at it, because I learned that lesson doing your piece. I got maybe about halfway through, and when I started getting in some of the detailed stuff, I think I had put it in a better light, like stood it up maybe on the hutch or something, because I was doing this out on the kitchen island. And I stood it up and looked at it and said, uh-oh. Same thing you said. I've got a problem here.
Yeah.
And so I tried to hover over it more, but then my head was in the way of the time lapse, so I was kind of monkeying things around until I got it just right. And anytime I did something, I would just flip it back up and say, is this good? Do I need to shove the line that way? Do I need to go up that way? Is it too much detail, like sewing in the like in your window panes, you have the
cross bracing or whatever it is.
So sewing those in, it was like, okay, I tried it and felt, and I'm like, nope, it's too thick.
Right.
I don't know if I can get it that thin without starting to...
You lose landscape.
Well, in that and pull the piece in,
that's
get
what
more
I mean.
shrinkage.
That's what I mean. You lose it. You lose that landscape. It kind of caves in. Yeah.
Yes.
So
I sewed it in.
Just for folks, I want to suggest that if you don't have a drafting table, which I did when I was younger, and I don't anymore, because I like to spread out.
Yeah.
But you can buy tabletop.
Diddle flip.
Yeah, we've used them in here. We used them with Kimberly Pulley, and I got mine at Hobby Lobby years ago for like $20. Like $20.
I know people have used like beanbag, like for your laptop that you can sit there and
something
then put
like
it behind the foam board and
just
tip it.
And another tip someone shared with me years ago when I was doing a big piece. 40 inches, wide.
That's a big
getting
piece.
a door peephole. So you just buy the peephole, and then if you get up over your piece and you look at it, it pushes you away. So that you're viewing the piece more at a distance. So depending on where your piece is going to be, because apparently most pieces are viewed about 6 feet away.
That's about the distance I used.
About 6 feet away. And when we're making a piece, we're just all up in it.
Yes.
And worrying about like
in there.
every little detail. But really, you're going to be viewing it about 6 feet away, and that 6 feet away, and that's that little eyeglass. Now it does kind of fishbowl things, but it gives you a pushback. It's kind of an interesting thing to do.
Yeah. And, I think it's little lessons that keep getting reiterated on all your shows. It's just take a minute, mistakes happen, reevaluate. You can probably cover it. You can cut it out.
Or pull it out. Yeah, you might be able to pull it out. Yeah.
I generally don't like to pull. I'll get the little embroidery scissors and just snip it right out.
Interesting.
because I don't like the pulling of the fabric, and then if I have a distortion of something I worked so hard to get just right, I'm like, nope, I just take the embroidery scissors and just snip it out. But take a step back, look at it. Mistakes happen, cover it up, however it is that you need to deal with it. Yeah, so sometimes you just got to step away from the piece, look at it from the distance. I still like to get up close because some pieces
close
draw you in. And so what is it going to look like when somebody gets in there and looks at the detail?
Yeah.
And
well, let's look at a little of that, because a lot of it is in the foreground, kind of coming with the barn. Okay, right. We get to
we pins out.
The wall.
I used worsted wool yarn for the tree trunk.
Love that.
To kind of give it that barky look.
And yet you still added shadow and highlights on top.
I did.
Great. A lot of individual leaves happening in there.
The leaves were all wet felted. I used a few different colors, viscose and I think some silk. And then I just cut them into tiny little...
Kind of like our fiber
diamond
mishmash
shapes. Yeah, I just cut them into little ones so I could stack them and use lighter colors to the right side, because of course the whole time I'm trying to keep it in mind where's the sun, so that all my shading goes the same way. Yeah. If you're looking at the left side of the piece, the leaves tend to be a little bit more darker, and the right side they kind of blend in with the grass. I was not happy with the front grass. The grass had to be changed. It was too dark.
So we have our little trails here, and there's activity happening. The barn's not in isolation. You just like your inspiration picture, there's kind of a hill and a little line. You can see where we're doing work. You go in the front door or the pedestrian door or the side door over there. That's really fun.
A couple of barn doors there.
Yeah, I love it. And I like how the wall goes from like a suggestion to some great detail there. And you added some embroidery down there to give it detail. And
lots of French knots. Maybe like 500 went into that piece. I don't know how many French knots are in there. And, I tried to make each piece of it something meaningful. A lot of the Texas references, Texas limestone for the wall, obviously LivingFelt, your address, the year that your business was established.
Were there shrinky dinks?
No, I used polymer clay.
Oh, okay.
And I found a shape of, address signs online that I liked. I printed them out, rolled the clay out, and then just cut around that piece of paper and did 2 of them. And then I printed out your address and the established, because I wasn't certainly going to paint that freehand. No, my mother could do that.
Very
Her writing
smart,
is beautiful.
very smart, yeah.
And so then I just Mod Podge them on, then put a coat over it after it dried, and I had put holes in it before I baked each of the signs, including the LivingFelt one. I put pins through before I baked them. So then I just used French knots to sew them through.
I love it.
Fabric.
Yeah, fantastic. I always thought somehow maybe they were shrinky dinks. But I love that.
Remind me of that.
I've used shrinky dinks for like little tags,
I haven't done those since I was a kid. I forgot about those.
Well, it's so beautiful, Noelle. We really love it. I mean, obviously, like as soon as I said, I'm like, how could there be any other barn in our animation than this? It's beautiful, and I told you before, I really think it feels like a gift to the community, and and I think also now that you share the detail with us, then it's really going to inspire a lot of people to try something that maybe they didn't try before. Yeah. Even if it's a small or quarter of the size, to try one.
Absolutely. I've had plenty of epic failures. And stuff goes into the scrap like, well, that did not come out how I intended. If it's something really meaningful, then I'll take the time. I think you've mentioned a few times it took 200 hours, and I have no idea how it took that long. But I just, you like to needle felt in draft mode. You're always saying, well, I kind of get, everything kind of pieced in, like the lavender fields that you've done. I have a hard time with that.
Moving on to the next place.
Yeah, I want everything flat and smooth. In some cases, I will work in draft mode. On this piece, I needed things to be where they needed to be.
I get it.
And not move. So it was like, okay, I'm doing the sky, pretty much done. And at the end, anything that was wild and loose, I just took animal clippers and right over the top if I couldn't get it down. So I had to kind of to it as I
Yeah.
went final.
Yeah, I think it depends on the piece. Like sometimes I need to kind of see it coming to life.
Mhm.
You know, I need to just
Sure.
see it start to take shape. And sometimes for me, it might be the color that I put down is starting to dictate. You know, it's like
Of course, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
letting it reveal itself. But I can relate because I first started art drawing, and like I started with the eyeball, and that eyeball was going to be perfect and done before I moved on to anything else. And sometimes the whole thing would change after I finished that eyeball. I'm like, oh, you're a dragon instead of a this, you know.
Yeah,
but
I've had that happen.
you know, and so but I do know people who take that approach, and so it doesn't matter what your approach is,
Yes.
as long as it's an enjoyable one.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah,
Like,
and
have
it
fun.
varies. Like I said, it varies piece to piece. What's your end goal? I did a Pele piece recently, and it all hinged on the face. I did the
Right,
face
the face
first.
had to be right.
7.35 hours or something ridiculous just on like face and neck. And I
Right.
think it's like 2.5 inches wide, maybe 2.5
Right.
inches tall. But I needed everything to be right because if that was off
Right.
and just didn't look good, the whole rest of the piece was pointless, in my opinion.
Right, I get it.
And once that was done, then it was just free form and play. And if things overlap or I need to move things.
You just went for the
that's-
vibe and the feel
Yeah.
of the spirit of the piece.
Yeah, and let things push things back. Like I said, it worked the same way with the barn there. The barn was done, I think, last because I didn't want anything to change with that, or pretty close to last.
Mhm.
And so it was just kind of this white area that was just floating in the sea of everything
But you always knew
else.
what it was going to be. You
In my
always,
head,
you
I
always
did.
had that vision.
And it was amazing. Once I just
Mhm.
got the body of it in, before I added any of the detail and the windows and the shading, once I got just the body of it in, how everything else just shoved back. And I thought that was just a really interesting process.
Yeah.
And the time lapse of what I saw in my head that I could share with others is, how do you keep creating depth? Put something in front.
That's
There's
right.
details in there that I didn't originally plan, but I felt that this hill needs to be separated from this one
Mm-hmm.
to, kind of account for shading or give it more
Yep.
of a rolling look. So it was like, okay, well now I'm going to add some little trees that separate this hill and this
Right.
valley, and a few of the sheep look like they're kind of rearing up.
And they might be, actually.
They might be.
They might
They're
be.
super happy with the
They're
spring grass.
dancing and jumping around because sheep do sheepy things. You know?
That's right. That's right.
Sheep do sheepy things.
The planters on the top of the pillars were not planned.
Right?
Wasn't even in there. And then when I put the signs on there and the LivingFelt on the barn, I just was looking at it, standing up, and I'm standing back in the studio looking at it. I'm like, it needs something. The perspective, I thought I did a good job. The angles were all correct, but I'm like, it just needs something. Locks and twirling some.
Yeah, I do love those. Yeah, great color and
merino
great
short fiber.
great
yeah,
texture
yeah,
there. They're very
so.
cheerful and welcoming, which
Yeah.
I think is perfect because
Thank
you would want it to be a welcoming place, and it really is delightful, Noelle. And
Thank
of
you.
course, now hanging in here at LivingFelt, everyone can see it, which is our most visited wall, which is the LivingFelt wall and the snack station, at least at this moment, because we don't have a lot of wall space. I mean, we've covered it all up with stuff and supplies.
Yeah. I
And,
snuck a piece in there before it got completely covered. So I'm glad that people come and enjoy it. And it's by the snack
Yeah.
station. Everybody needs snacks. You're always saying, gnomes look better with snacks
Everybody
when you're
visits
making gnomes.
the snack station.
I love the barnwood frame. It's probably exactly what I would have chosen. The only thing I would have done differently is the matting, because again, it's one of those OCD, like it's uneven. And
Yeah.
it was really there because when I planned the 16 by 20, I did the felt sheet 17 by 21. So I gave myself an inch of shrinkage, half inch each side or whatever. Turned out not to be enough. So I put in that edge so that the mat could be mounted to it and bring the mat right up to the image.
Yeah.
If it were me personally framing it in my house, just because I don't like asymmetry,
Yeah.
I would have brought the mat, even if I had to go in a little bit to the picture just
Yeah.
to have it clean.
Yeah.
But the rest of it, I think, is
honestly,
great, but it's not my piece of art anymore.
if I were framing it only for me, I would have done the same thing. But everybody said, show the magenta. So I thought if I did that it would dishonor your thing, and so I left some of it showing.
Yeah.
But for me too, the mat could have been just a scunch bigger, and covered it, because I do find sometimes when we display felt pieces, people want to show all the organic edges, and
Yes.
some of them just have more power if you come off the organic
Yes.
edges and you hide them. Just some of them.
Yes.
It's just like, wow, now you're in it as
Absolutely.
opposed to looking at everything else. But I think it's magical, and the way that, the sky goes dark, it goes to the dark. You kind of allow it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
kind of allow it.
Yeah. And if you want to change it someday, then you know what?
We can do
it can be changed.
Right. Just change out the mat.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost that much to do. For exactly how it is, I love it.
I'm glad.
It's fabulous.
I'm so glad.
Really a fun piece and
I'm really
great
glad.
spirit. It's got like a playfulness and a whimsy and a magical enchantment to it.
Yeah.
So let's just tell people where you can see more of Noelle's work besides visiting our Facebook group, because you're sharing stuff in the Facebook group, which is, you shared this even before I saw it. You shared pieces of it, parts of it.
I was trying to figure out how to share enough to keep people interested, but not enough to tip you off.
I guess you did a good job.
A secret. So.
But your website is The Gleeful You.
EWE.
Happy Sheep. Yeah. And
TheGleefulYou.com.
you can see more of her work there, and even a lot of classes that you've taken, projects that you've made from classes, or some of the free tutorials and other original artworks, things you're doing.
I just love to try any of the stuff that you're teaching us, either for free or whatever, because I always find that somehow it can relate to something else. Even if I'm not, big into building gnomes.
Totally.
It's, building a solid core for, say, doing like the faces. Kimberly Czar's faces.
Yes.
You have to have that solid built core. There's always some lesson in something that I can take to something else.
Learn the process,
even if
apply
I don't
it
make
to
that
your own
piece.
project. Absolutely. Learn the process, apply it to your own project.
So there's stuff on my website. I haven't done my blog in a little while.
That's okay.
After my dog passed,
Everybody
I was
understands.
like, man,
Nobody's done their blog in a while.
Yeah. So your piece might have been the last one or second to last one. I think I have a lot of links in there about LivingFelt.
Oh, thank you
that I
very
use
much.
primarily. 98% of everything is from here, and how it's just so wonderful. You're a wonderful teacher. You just always tell people, just have fun with it, and don't worry about the mistakes. You can redo it. You use it for something else, and put it in the scrap pile, and. So,
But no matter what we're doing, hopefully with our art, we're having fun.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully. You don't have to. But if you want to, just have fun.
Well, some pieces are serious. If you're making a commission piece and it needs to be the way it needs to be, then you take that more serious. And then some things, they just end up the way they end up. Or I've started projects and found they want to be something else.
Absolutely, yeah.
I've intended them to be one thing. I made one of your little Waldorf witches. And she was supposed to be just a cute plain one like you have with the orange, and I think there's like green underneath. And she was just supposed to be just plain. And the whole time, this piece kept saying to me, I need to be like Cruella de Vil. Like, that was just what she kept saying. So she just got blingier and blingier.
Fun.
So they have a mind of their own.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to go with it. I found some things are not worth fighting.
Agreed.
You just
Agreed.
go with the wool.
Yes, go with the wall.
Be the boss, but sometimes you got to follow where it's directing.
I totally agree. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Our piece. Thanks for sharing the
You're very
detail,
welcome.
and thanks for coming all this way just to share a little more.
You're very welcome. Thank you for accommodating me. It was great to give back, and I think our community is just so great. Everyone's so willing to help other people, and I help when I can, and I just think it's a really great community that you've built. You guys have done a wonderful job.
We've all made it together.
You certainly deserve it. You deserve all these little accolades and gifts that you get.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Visit her site, The Gleeful You. Check her out also in our group, LivingFelt Friends on Facebook. And
love to see everyone's stuff.
Yeah, so if you've enjoyed this, just leave her a comment down below so she can chat it up with you in the comments.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.